Hello friends, and a happy New Year's 2020. To start things off this year, I have a very special series that I will be kicking off with this video today. Scary and true Scandinavian stories. Yes, friends. Everybody who knows anything about Scandinavia knows how frightening and terrifying it is up there near the Arctic Circle with such little light during the cold months of the year, and not to mention the cold least of all. The landscapes of all these three countries conspires to make the perfect setting for general creepiness and horror, and I can't wait to bring it to you today. Starting things off, I have a true scary story for you friends. One dedicated to my Patreon supporter, longtime subscriber and friend, Jenny O. I do hope you enjoyed this one, Jenny. We just passed Christmas, and it is about Finland. Some of my favorite things, and I certainly hope some of yours. Without further ado, friends, I present Natsku Lovesters. Murderers came round on Christmas Day. Christmas Day in the evening, I was visiting a friend. When it was getting late in the evening, my bloke called and told me an old bandmate and his wife were visiting and playing guitar together. I headed home, but I was really tired. So when I got in, I half-jokingly told them, "I'm going to sleep, so if you get too noisy, I'm going to tell you to get the hell out." A joke with my bloke, as the last time he had an old bandmate round, they had been too loud and kept me up all night. I thought I'd be polite and say hi to the couple before heading to bed. They were the old rocker types, covered in tattoos, dressed in black, wearing sunglasses indoors kind of type. We chatted for a while, and they seemed really nice and, well, normal. The woman had a couple of grown-up children, and the man seemed quite friendly and even spoke some English with me. I live in Finland, but English is my native language. After a while, I said goodnight and went to bed. At 5:30 in the morning, I was awakened by shouting. I went to the lounge to see what was going on and saw my bloke holding a knife to this couple, and they were all shouting at each other. I calmed things down fortunately, basically told them to all calm the hell down, and took the knife away. I should mention that my bloke had anger issues when he drinks strong drinks, and he had been drinking cognac all evening. He's trying to stay sober now after the experience of that evening. They carried on arguing, but as it was in Finnish and drunken talk, I couldn't quite understand everything. But the gist of it was the woman reminding the man that my bloke was the son of their friend, and then the woman said to my bloke very clearly, "I definitely understood this right. How would you feel if I held a knife to your woman?" At the time, not knowing who they were, she just sounded to me like kind of motherly, trying to make him understand how his actions make other people feel. But in retrospect, that was incredibly chilling. The whole fight ended after about 20 minutes in forgiveness and hugs, as drunk scraps often do, and the couple left. Later on, me and my bloke went to bed, and he apologized for losing his temper and acting very stupidly, but then mentioned that the couple were actually murderers. Then he went off to sleep to leave me freaking out that I had told murderers to chill the hell out, and one had even mentioned holding a knife to me. I don't know the details of what they did, whether they killed a couple of people together, or if it was separately before they met, or even if they ever went to prison for it. It's highly unsettling to know that such people were in my house, and that they were just so normal, in the late middle-aged drunken Finnish way. Honestly, they didn't act any different from plenty of other non-murdering Finns I know. I appreciate and understand the concern about my partner's behavior. He suffers from depression that induces rage, which has been treated effectively when he was in his early 20s, but has returned again now due to a lot of stress with his job and dad. He is seeking treatment, and I'm not planning on leaving him because his illness can be treated, but making sure no more troublesome old acquaintances get in touch. That will be a difficult job in this small town, though. I'm going to speak to him about moving away as soon as his dad retires. They own a business together. My daughter is my priority, and part of my protecting her is protecting her stable family unit. One setback in 3.5 years is not enough to rip that apart, right? Half the people I encounter in this small town are either violent or crooks in some kind of way, but otherwise normal, nice even. I don't know if that's normal for all small towns round here, or if it's just this town, but you get desensitized to it pretty quickly. It was just a bit of a shock to read your replies at first, because I was so used to this life. It's eye-opening, so thanks for your honest replies. I certainly hope you enjoyed that true scary story, Jenny, from Scandinavia, and about Christmas, the holiday we just left as of the recording of this video. Up next, friends, is another chilling Scandinavian story. Not true, but one of my personal favorites. Not everything has to be true to be scary, am I right? As I hope this story proves too, in cat mother horror lovers, don't visit Sognsvann at night. I have never been afraid of the dark. Sometimes sitting in the darkness was even soothing. So when I moved to Norway, it did not really faze me that night would fall steadily faster and more sudden as the summer days transitioned to autumn. After a few weeks of settling in, I joined the Norwegian fitness obsession and began running the 2-mile trail that surrounded a lake that resided a short walk from my apartment complex. The trail would take 1 or 2 hours, dependent upon how committed I was to run and not wander, and I usually did this in the mornings as it suited my daily routine. But a few days ago, I decided to run the trail and catch a predicted red sunset. I should have stayed home. It was around 6:30 p.m. The sunset would be approaching soon, and the temperature had just fallen beneath 0. I wore thermals and warm overalls so that the icy air would not deter me from finishing the trail early. Something I should have explained earlier is that the trail was surrounded by a forest and other trails that led into it, taking people to heights for panoramic viewpoints of the city. With only one streetlight near the end of the trail to offer relief from the unrelenting darkness when the sun set, I could not afford to wander the trail this night. Before I left, I popped my head into the kitchen to check on my flatmate, to find her still in deep slumber from her hangover. Slipping my phone into my pocket of my hoodie, I placed my headphones in and left for the lake. When I reached it, it was heavily populated already with people relaxing on rock, grass, and bench. I had wondered whether they had come to photograph the sunset as I was trying to do during my run. As I started down the trail, the owner of the lake food shack stopped me, speaking in Norwegian before I explained my little understanding. "Are you hiking?" she asked. I shook my head and replied that I had come to run, which seemed to concern her. "Be very careful on the path." This was very typical of the owner. I had witnessed her warn other prospective runners when I had previously visited the lake in early evening with friends, so I nodded politely and said I would see her the next day as the shack would be closed before I finished the trail. Perhaps it was because I had only seen this encounter from afar, but the fearful expression that furrowed her brow was unsettling. I shook it off and took off on the trail. I do not know how long I had been running when my phone paused to inform me that it was on 20% battery power, but as I stopped to retrieve it from my pocket to restart my music again, I was near blinded by the bright screen I had forgotten to dim, my headphones getting yanked out in the process. But the brightness made me notice it. It was silent. I surveyed my surroundings and came to realize night had fallen, the trees now only a mesh of dark shapes. It was strange, as the trees always gave a small shiver from the breeze the lake sent over them. I peered to my left and noticed a plank leading out into the water, so I quickly walked onto it to see that I was halfway down the trail. I looked directly across the lake to see if the people that I had left sitting on the benches were still there, but I was instead confronted by emptiness. I was all alone on the lake. In this moment, I realized how odd it was that there were no other people running. I would usually see many people on my run. It was eerie to be alone and in the dark, but as I said, I had never been afraid of the dark, and I was more annoyed that I had missed the sunset. Given that I was halfway now, I shoved my headphones back in my pocket alongside my dying phone and returned to the trail with a quicker pace in my stride. It was not long though until I stopped again. This time it was to hunch over and catch my breath. But as I straightened up, I realized I had reached the darkest part of the trail, where the trees obscured any sight of the lake. Just as I spotted this, I was startled by the sudden crunch of a tree branch to my right. I stared into the darkness that confronted me, slyly taking my phone out and switching its torch on. Turning my attention back to the path, I focused the torch in front of me and began to run more cautiously. That noise was too loud to be bird or squirrel. Too loud. And I was right, for a few minutes later there was another crunch, louder this time. I refused to stop, but shot my torch towards the darkness on my right, and just as I did that, a trainer launched at me from within the darkness. In trying to dodge the thing, I flew forward and crashed onto the ground. I scrambled up and picked up my phone, which luckily had not cracked on impact, waving the torch around me. But still there was nothing. It was still silent. The trainer had fallen nearby, and with optimism that some kid was just pranking me, I went over and caught a glimpse of something fleshy, bloody, and bone-like nestled inside. My blood began to pump with anxiety now, echoing in my ears, and my heart beat with panicked confusion. You would think at this point I would have decided something was wrong, but I was still convinced it was just the darkness playing tricks on me. All I had to do was get to the streetlight at the end of the trail. Once I was there, I knew I would be moments from the entrance again. From muscle memory, I had to be 15 minutes away from it if I ran quickly. But as I raced on, I was stopped again, this time by something I just cannot explain.
Lara, is that you?
The voice of my flatmate, who I had left sleeping on the sofa, called out. I skidded to a halt, but did not turn my head as I stuttered, Ida? The silence that had been so deafening ceased, and a monstrous howl of wind caused the trees to shake around me. My phone crackled, and the torch flickered off, and I became enshrouded in darkness. The noise of the branches striking one another was so loud that I did not hear the voice that had called to me from behind my creep closer. A trembling breath of frosty air escaped my throat, and created a cloud as I stood motionless, feeling the unwelcome arrival of foreign hot breath upon the back of my neck.
Lara, please turn around and help me.
Ida groaned.
I think I have twisted my foot.
I was not turning around. Ida was asleep at home. She was hungover. She would not be able to think of exercise without needing to vomit. I wanted to confirm as such by texting her, but I was too frightened to make movement. I knew it was not Ida, not just because of how I had left her, but because Ida was smaller than me, which contradicted the breath upon my neck. She could not even reach my shoulders. Whatever stood behind me was far bigger than I was. I stood there for what felt like an eternity as the wind wailed and the trees collided. A tear dribbled down my cheek, and I told myself, I'm not afraid of the dark. But I believe this was the first time that I did not believe that. I was afraid. I knew this was not just a hoax from nature. Nevertheless, the mental chant was enough to move my wobbly legs, and took tentative steps forwards. The clatter of the trees stopped when I did this, and silence resumed. It felt like I was being tracked, because as I continued to move, there was no movement from behind. I was not so overcome with fright to understand that whatever stood there would only move when it could not be heard. It needed to hear me. I continued slowly, and when the silhouette of the streetlight became visible, I took my chance and began to sprint. As I suspected from the paranoia that had settled in me, the cries of the forest reignited, and I could hear the voice of Ida echo. But I did not stop. I did not look back. I just kept going. The noise grew louder, as did the voice as I approached the streetlight, until finally I bathed in the yellow light of the lamp. I could see the entrance of the lake. I had made it, and it was at that moment that I decided to look back at the darkness. Stillness and tranquility came once more, with only a single cloud of ashen air disturbing the blackness within the trees. I rushed home, breathless and gasping for water. As soon as I unlocked the door, I bounded into the kitchen and peered at the sofa, where Ida still lay asleep. Yes, friends, nothing like a harmless evening walk around a strange lake with dark pine trees standing round. Of course you know I joke, as does anyone who follows this channel religiously. Speaking of which, friends, if any of you are listening who have not as yet subscribed, I do encourage you to do so. Smash that subscribe button and make sure to press the little notification bell. I would also encourage you to check back periodically to make sure that you are still subscribed and signed up for bell notifications, as YouTube has been unsubscribing a number of people from me lately. Thank you, Susan, YouTube CEO. And now, friends, for our final story in this first volume of scary and true Scandinavian stories. Another true scary story by Upside and Down. The Man on the Baltic Sea. This happened on a trip sanctioned by my former high school. We went to Russia and had a wonderful time in Moscow and St. Petersburg. The travel agency, in a bid to get more money, offered us an extension to Tallinn, Estonia, and Helsinki, Finland. Being school kids out of the United States, some of us for the first time, of course we took it. We took an uneventful trip on a bus to Estonia, and then a trip to cross the Baltic Sea into Finland. The trip leader decided that we had to be pretty damn responsible for the rest of the week and a half, and told us we could sit and eat wherever we wanted, and told us where to find him. We had lunch on the ship, and that's when things turned creepy. A group of girls had claimed a table to themselves and were just chatting and eating. Then a man came up to them and started talking in Russian. They apologized and said they only knew English, and fortunately he left. Then he came back a few minutes later and sat at a table right next to them again. After a few minutes of having him stare at them, they moved to a different table and in a different part of the ship. But a few minutes later, the same man appeared again and sat right next to them. Then one of them saw him take out a camera and take a few unwarranted pictures of them. Having enough of this, the group of 3 set off to find either a parent or a teacher. They hit the jackpot, and most of the teachers and a few parents were all sitting together and told them what was happening. The trip leader went off to find some employee on the ship to help us out, and the rest of us all came to the table of the girls. Once the adults came crowding in, the man fortunately left. The girls all felt better, but stayed with the adults just to be safe. Then one girl, Mary, went to the bathroom. She knew another person was already in them and felt safe enough to go by herself. Then, on the way there, she saw the same creepy Russian man from before. She tried to hurry past, outside the ladies' room where she turned back, but he was waiting for her at the end of the hall. She went into the bathroom and started hyperventilating. What she didn't know was that at the end one of the dads had followed her just to be on the safe side and saw her being followed. He brushed right past the creepy man and stood guard at the bathroom door, being sure to give the man a proper glare. Seeing this, the man walked off in a hurry. Once he was gone, the dad knocked on the bathroom door and told Mary that he would wait for her and that it was safe to come out. The trip leader found someone who spoke English on the ship and told them what had happened, and they said that they would keep lookout for the man and make sure he got stopped if he was caught leaving the ship. No one saw him again, so I assumed that he was caught somewhere, or else snuck off with his pictures of underage girls.